Today on the Skid Factory, it's out with the single and in with the twins. This car is a 1984 Holden VK Calais. It was the top of the range at the time, so that didn't really mean much. Maybe it had air conditioning, I don't know. This is owned by our mate Dave. Dave's kind of famous on the show for his hole saw antics and his lack of fitting essential plugs into engines when he builds them, which is this engine. So you might hear us talk about him every now and then. He's a good mate of ours. He's been building this car for ever, as long as I've known him. It's all been resprayed, it's been retrimmed, it's got a cage in it. It's built as a drag car, so it's got a lot of good gear in it. It's been a long road for him. He's had heaps of failures with things. Just bought a 9-inch, was just a junk 9-inch, so it fell to pieces at the track and took out someone's window when the pinion fell off. The tail shaft broke, took out the transmission, so he had to have a new power glide built. About the only thing that hasn't gone wrong is the engine, actually, which Dave actually built in his shed himself, and it's probably fair to say that he's the least mechanic of anyone I know, so he's done pretty well there. After he put the engine in there, it previously had a 308 in it with a turbo and a carburetor, which is probably the silliest thing you could possibly do. We did tell him that at the time, but that kind of blew into 1,000 pieces on the Hoff's dyno at one stage. So we finally convinced him to go LS, which is pretty much a no-brainer for a car like this. He picked up an LQ4, which is an iron 6-litre with cathedral port heads, so an earlier 2000s one. It's all been filled up with reasonable bits. Not a huge dollar build or anything like that, but pretty reasonable. It should support 1,000 horsepower pretty easy. This turbo is probably the thing that we're least happy about. It's a Borgwarner S475, probably already done 1 million kilometres on the side of some truck because he bought it off eBay many years ago for $400. So it's probably not the greatest performance turbo around, although I can hear people screaming right now because everyone in America does use Borgwarner turbos. I do suspect that that's because they're very cheap though, not because they're the greatest thing in the world. And this particular one is a truck-based turbo, so the compressor is very small and the turbine is massive, which isn't really exactly what you'd want on a petrol engine. So what we're going to do is pull off that and fit these. And these are GT35 Gen 2, so latest and greatest. One is reverse rotation, as you may have noticed if you're a train spotter. I've been wanting to play around with reverse rotation for a little bit because I think it looks cool and it makes it sort of everything sort of fit better. These were supplied by Christian at Goleby's. He looks after us really well, so we're thankful for that. He also hooked us up with this glorious looking intercooler, which is to suit a twin turbo in and single out application, and is sized to fit inside this area here, which is not real big on a Commodore. That's a Plasma Man unit. What else have we got to do to this thing? We've got to take the engine out because it's got some silly aftermarket sump on it that is rubbish, and just put a standard Commodore aluminium sump on it. And also I've got to fix a couple of little things, and we're going to check the head tension because it has had some overheating issues in the past. We may put a new radiator in it as well. It's got sort of a cut down radiator in it, which theoretically should work, but we haven't had much luck with it so far, so we may have to do something with that. So we're going to try and give it a bit of a birthday and fix some of the things that were a good idea at the time, but maybe because we had too many lemon squashes, that's why they were such a good idea. So out with that old stuff, in with this new stuff. A friend of ours, Chris, built some exhaust manifolds for it. It's quite interesting. It's not the way that I do it because I don't have the skills. He's got CAD design skills and actually designs it all on his computer first, and then has a cutting list, and sort of everything works out and they look great. So some interesting stuff to look at there. We're going to delete this brake booster and master because we need space for a dump pipe out that side. It's going to have dual dump pipes. And we've also got to put some new coils on it because the old LS1 coils did not like boost, and we're going to replace it with these IGN1A Haltech coils, which are pretty much the duck's guts when it comes to inductive coils. So we'll throw that on there and see what we can do with it. Hopefully we'll win. Let's get this engine out.
The old Borg-Warner turbo and stainless steel manifolds are removed and kept on the bench for a possible future project. Al then removes the front bar on the intercooler, and we find that the radiator has been overpressurized, which is a definite sign that cylinder pressure has made its way into the cooling system.
Check it.
Engine's out on the stand. We suspect that it's got head gasket issues. It's always had some overheating problems that it really shouldn't have had, and the radiator is actually swollen, like blown up. So I'd say it's probably had some combustion pressure going through the cooling system. So we're going to pull the heads off and see what's going on. See if it's got the correct bolt tension and that sort of thing on the head studs. And we're also going to change the sump over to a standard Commodore front sump instead of this stupid one that's on it. So let's do it.
What about that stud in the back of the manifold?
Oh yeah, there's an incredibly butchered stud in the back of the, well, it's just a giant hole now. I assume it used to be a broken off bolt, but now it just looks like a giant cavity. So we'll have to get that welded up, or I'll try and weld it up and re-tap it as well. So let's go.
The valve train assembly is removed to gain access to the head studs. Al then checks the tension with a torque wrench to see if David made any mistakes. Bit loose.
A little bit, David.
Still going to pull them off?
Yep. with the heads off, we can see evidence of the of combustion gases getting through into the water jacket, which is pretty much what we expected. It's probably just down to the heads not being tensioned enough. So we'll get some new gaskets, give these a little skim, fix up that gnarled out what used to be a thread hole, and we'll be ready to put it back together, and then we can get back to what we're supposed to be doing, which is putting cool turbos on. And that will be next time. Thanks for watching. This is beginning to feel a bit like the VL.
Maybe we should pull the sump off and check for bearing material, or check the rod tension.
Yeah, I probably should. We've got to take the sump off anyway. Oh, the struggle is real.
That looks good, doesn't it?
Actual chunks.
The hell is that? Maybe we're in for a rebuild. Or maybe Dave just never changed the oil.
I suspect he has never changed it. You know how I said he did well for it to still be going?
What does Dave do for a job again?
I don't know, no one knows. It's like Barney on that How I Met Your Mother show. I tell you what he isn't, an engine builder.
He's a good bloke though, I will say that.
He's alright.